My desktop background is a picture of Emma, smiling. I looked at it as I read the text message on her phone. Already missing you. That was amazing last night. See you next week? Kyle. It came in at 2:47 p.m. today. I check it again to make sure. That was right around the time of my wife's yoga class. The one she's been attending for the past 3 months. The study is quiet, save for the gentle hum of my PC. Normally I find it comforting, but today it's just a reminder of all the work I still have to do. I lean back in my chair and take a deep breath. The leather creaks beneath my weight. My wife is asleep upstairs. I took her phone from the kitchen table while she wasn't looking. It has to be a mistake, I say, almost choking on the words, but I'm a programmer. I don't like to speculate. I like to know. And that's why I read the text message in its entirety. I brought up her call history. There were several calls to Kyle during the times when she was at yoga, and they lasted for 45 minutes each time. I put down her phone on the kitchen counter and looked up the dates for her yoga classes. You're just being paranoid, I say, rubbing my temples. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation. I started wondering if perhaps it was. He lost his wife 2 years ago. He started coming around more regularly about 6 months ago. Emma started doing yoga 3 months ago. I opened a spreadsheet and began recording everything I could think of. Every date, every time, every suspicious event. It helped to have something to do. I heard the floor creak again. More footsteps. James, I hear Emma call out from the bedroom. Are you coming to bed? Yeah, I'll be right in, I reply, relieved that my voice doesn't betray me. She comes to the door wearing the robe I got her for our anniversary. It's after 12, she yawns. Time for bed. Just some work stuff I need to finish up. Won't take long. She came up next to me and kissed me on the side of the head. I tried not to grimace and pull away. Don't go to bed too late. You have that meeting with the clients. I won't. She pauses for a second, as if she can sense my discomfort. Good night, then, she says finally, padding back toward the door. Emma? She looked at me, confused. How was your yoga class? She doesn't hesitate. Good. Roger had us try some new positions. My hamstrings are still burning. Roger, the name of her yoga instructor. Not Kyle. She's lying. Glad you like it, I say, facing my monitor again. After she leaves, I sit in silence for several long minutes, listening to her footsteps retreat upstairs. Then I open my spreadsheet again, adding a new column. Lies. I pull up the property records for the yoga studio she claims to attend. It takes less than 5 minutes to discover it closed down 2 months ago. Roger Stevens, the instructor she just mentioned, now teaches at a different studio across town. My fingers move across the keyboard, documenting everything with clinical precision. Each piece of evidence is a line of code, building toward an inescapable conclusion. But I need more. I need to understand the full scope of this betrayal before I execute my response. I check the time. 12:47 a.m. The house has settled into its nighttime silence again. In less than 7 hours, I'll be sitting in a client meeting, pretending everything is normal. In 9 hours, Emma will leave for her fictional yoga class. I open my bottom desk drawer and pull out the small GPS tracker I'd ordered for my car last month, but never installed. Tomorrow, it will have a new purpose. I also make a note to contact a private investigator, someone who can fill in the gaps in my data. The monitor's light feels harsher now, and my eyes sting from staring at it too long. But sleep isn't an option, not when my world has shifted so dramatically on its axis. I save the spreadsheet with an innocuous name, Q4 Budget Analysis, and begin planning my next steps. Each action must be calculated, each move precise, because when I finally confront this situation, I'll need more than suspicions and text messages. I'll need the truth in all its ugly glory. The night stretches ahead of me, full of possibilities and plans. And somewhere upstairs, my wife sleeps peacefully, unaware that her carefully constructed house of lies is about to come crashing down. But not yet. Not until I have every piece of the puzzle in place. I crack my knuckles and begin typing again, the soft click of keys a steady rhythm in the quiet night. The game is on, and I intend to win. The darkness eventually surrendered to dawn, though I hadn't slept. I'd spent the night methodically organizing my thoughts and plans until the first hints of sunlight began creeping through the basement window. The sound of the shower running upstairs signals my cue. Time to transform theories into action. I quietly make my way to the garage, GPS tracker in hand, knowing I have exactly 12 minutes before Emma's morning routine brings her downstairs. The next day, I get started on my program. I place a tracker on Emma's car while she's in the shower. Then we have breakfast together, just like usual. "Hey, the Andersons want us to come over for a barbecue this weekend," she says, turning towards me. "Kyle's going to be there. Apparently, he makes a mean potato salad." I took a sip of my coffee and said, "Sure. What time?" 3 o'clock, Saturday. I told Sarah we'd bring that wine they enjoyed. She brushes her hair back behind her ear, and I notice the way she touches her neck. Another detail to keep track of. For the next couple of days, I try to keep a low profile while installing a few cameras. One of them is pointed at the driveway, another at the backyard and the trellis between our house and Kyle's. I set them up to record everything, and made sure to have access to the live feed from my computer. On Friday, I was working from home when I saw Kyle in his backyard. He was cutting his bushes, looking over at our house every now and then. He was careful to position himself in such a manner that he made sure to be visible from our kitchen window. My phone rang. It was Emma. "Hey, babe, I'm going to be stuck at work late tonight. Can you start dinner?" "Sure," I answer flatly. "I think the chicken will be thawed by then." "You're the best. Love you. Love you too." I do a quick check of the tracker. She's not at work. She's at the mall on the other side of town. I make a note of it. On Saturday, we went over to the Andersons for a barbecue. It was only a couple blocks away, so we walked. Emma held my arm the entire way, which made me feel even worse. "James, Emma!" Sarah Anderson calls out from her porch. "Perfect timing. Kyle's here too. He's out back with Tom, manning the grill." I took note of that. More data to add to the list. Kyle looked up from the BBQ with a spatula in his hand. "Hey, my favorite neighbors!" he shouts, beaming at us with a smile that's as white as snow. "Want a hand with that?" I ask, stepping over to the grill. "Don't need one, but you can fetch me another beer." I see him looking over at Emma as she sits down by the pool with the other women, and I put my hand around my beer bottle. "So you're consulting now?" I ask him, taking a seat in one of the chairs nearby. "Yes, business is great. I'm working with a major client based out of the city. I found out already by looking him up on LinkedIn. This is one of the few things he's actually told the truth about." The rest of the day goes by uneventfully. Emma and Kyle keep their distance from one another, but I notice their furtive looks and the way they always manage to be in the same room together. "Your potato salad is delightful as always, Kyle," Emma is saying with her fork poised at dinner. "Family recipe," he replies with a smile. "Can't give away all my secrets." I noticed that Sarah Anderson was listening in as well. She had a similar expression on her face as I did, as if she was putting the pieces together in her mind, and things weren't quite adding up. When I had a chance later, I snuck inside to use the washroom, and while I was there, I hacked into Tom's Wi-Fi. It didn't take me long to create a backdoor that would allow me to monitor all of the traffic on their network. I knew Kyle's phone would occasionally connect to this network, since he came over to visit Tom on a regular basis. When I went back outside, Emma was helping Sarah clean up after the party. Kyle was standing over by the trellis, which separated our yard from Tom and Sarah's, texting something on his phone. A second later, I got a notification on my phone. It was from one of my monitoring programs. I took a look at it and saw that Emma had received a message on her phone. It was encrypted. "Time to go?" Emma walks up to me, a little wine drunk. "Yeah," I reply, watching Kyle put his phone away. Emma's babbling about Sarah's new kitchen renovation. I nod and make the appropriate noises, all the while thinking about everything I had seen that day. "That was fun," she tells me as we step back into our home. "I'm glad we did it. Me too." I put her coat away as she checks her phone. "I'm just going to do a little work in the study." "Don't stay up all night," she says, kissing my cheek. I went back to my office and pulled up the cameras to see what Emma was doing. She was in the bedroom, probably texting Kyle. I checked the trellis camera and saw him in his kitchen, his face a silhouette through the window. I opened my spreadsheet and began to log the day's events, creating an endless list of evidence for use in an eventual divorce. A ping from the computer told me there was motion detected on the driveway camera. I pulled up the footage and saw Kyle taking out the trash, lingering at the end of his driveway for a few moments, staring at our bedroom window, where the lights were still on in our master bedroom. I minimized the feed and went back to my spreadsheets and code, working on my side projects and doing my own competitive research at the same time as the hours ticked by. Tomorrow, I would look at the GPS data to see where they had been going. I checked the cell phone tower pings, the credit card receipts, and all the other innumerable pieces of data at my disposal. I would solve this problem piece by piece, bit by bit, and I would not miss a thing. The days passed by in a blur. I didn't even notice when it was Thursday, then Friday. I was so busy watching the footage and going through the logs, I barely realized I hadn't been to bed in 3 days. The green light from my monitor is blinking. It's 3:21 a.m. It's been 3 days since the barbecue. I've stopped sleeping in order to focus on my investigation. The security footage is playing on my left monitor. On my right monitor, I keep track of everything I find in a spreadsheet. Kyle's car passes by my house at 2:17 a.m. It's the third time this week. He's in Boston. That's what he claimed, at least. And he also updated his LinkedIn profile to make it look convincing. I changed the camera angle to see where he's going. 2 blocks away from our house, he parks his car. I write down the exact time and date. My phone vibrates next to me. It's Emma. Honey, you can't sleep again? Come to bed. I looked at the message for a second and then wrote back, almost done, just a few more minutes. It was a lie. I've been telling a lot of those lately. Both of us have. Minimizing the security camera feeds, I opened up the backup I had made of Emma's laptop yesterday when she was out for her yoga class. She had been searching for Airbnbs and had been sending emails from a new address to someone, arranging to meet up with them. I had only discovered that this evening, but now I noticed there was a draft saved in her email. It was from 3 months ago. I don't know how it happened. I think I'm in love with KJ is just so busy. He's always working, always on the phone, always distracted. K makes me feel seen. We kissed today, while Jay was at work. I grind my teeth, then unclench my jaw and keep reading. As I do, I realize the drafts are written like journal entries, detailing their affair and how they would sneak away to be together. The camera on the side of the house picked up some movement, and I switched over to see Kyle climbing over the fence into our backyard. My phone buzzed again. James, did you hear that? Something outside? Neighbor's cat, I answer, seeing Kyle's heat signature head back towards his place. It's fine. Go to sleep. I look at the phone records I obtained. His phone was at the Hampton Inn last Tuesday, the same night my wife said she had a work dinner. They arrived at the hotel at different entrances, but I have security footage showing both of them walking into the place, 17 minutes apart. I hear her footsteps above me and quickly minimize the incriminating evidence on my screen, pulling up a text editor with a few lines of code as she comes down the stairs, wearing her robe. It's 3 a.m., she whispers. This is not healthy. I turn around and smile at her. Big project. Didn't sleep anyway. She walks up to me. I notice that she's wearing a different perfume than usual. You're always working so hard, she says, her hands on my shoulders. I feel like I never see you. I almost choked on the irony. I know. It won't last too long. She rubbed my shoulders and I felt uncomfortable. Just promise me you'll be in bed soon, okay? I promise. She kisses me on top of the head and leaves me alone with my evidence. Once she's a safe distance away, I open up the latest intercepted email. Can't wait for Sunday. Jay will be gone for the day at his coding camp. We'll have so much time. I could delete this one and it would be gone forever. But I decided not to. I had to save everything. A new message showed up, from Kyle's phone to Emma's. All good. Look out your window. I changed the feed to the cameras outside. Kyle was in his backyard. I could see Emma in our bedroom window for a few seconds, confirming what I already knew. I added the information to the spreadsheet. Execute sequence, I mutter under my breath, running another backup of Emma's phone data. It collects everything. Text messages, pictures, location data, you name it. As the sun rises, I sit back with my coffee and look at all of the information I've collected. It's undeniable at this point. One last text message buzzes on my phone. James, come to bed, okay? I look at her message. It is almost surreal, like the woman who used to write me love notes in my lunch a decade ago is now writing notes to another man. Coming, I say, but I don't get up. In a few hours, Emma will wake up and prepare for her yoga class. Kyle will jog by our house, and I'll be there, keeping an eye on everything. Because now I have enough proof. Now I know exactly what to do. I save all the files one final time before shutting down the screens. It's time for the last step in my plan. The last step of my revenge. I stand up. Emma is sleeping upstairs, unaware that her life as she knows it is soon to be over. I smile at the thought as I go to bed. Tomorrow will be a very interesting day. After 3 hours of sleep, I sit in a cafe downtown. I'm far enough away from my home for it to be safe. I have invited someone here for a meeting. I want to make sure that what I have uncovered is true. I met him at a cafe, not too far from our apartment, and paid him for his work. Everything you need is in here, he says, professionally, although I think some of it may shock you. I picked up the coffee in front of me and held it to warm my hands. That's fine. I expect you won't be able to shock me at this point. The sounds of the coffee shop swirled around us, people talking about their kids and their jobs, their weekend plans, and the places they wanted to travel. So normal, but so strange. Well, you have the pictures, you have the records of the phone calls, but the part that you'll want to see is the video footage from the gym. The fitness center? Her instructor, Roger Stevens. They weren't longer workouts per se, but I can feel my grip tightening around the cup. He wasn't the only one. Of course he wasn't. For how long? Roughly 4 months, if what I'm seeing is correct. It coincides with the other thing I told you about. As I analyze all of this, I do so with the same emotional distance that I would use when solving a difficult problem at work. The more I hear, the more the puzzle pieces begin to fit together. Martinez pulled out his cell phone and showed me a video that had been sent to him. This was taken last Wednesday. It showed Emma entering the private training room with Roger. From the glass walls of the gym, it appeared to be a professional meeting. But then the angle switched, and it was clear that it was anything but. That's not all, Martinez continues, taking the phone back. You should hear how they organized it. It's actually a pretty impressive network. I sat back, smiling a little. The scheduling software? Yes, Stevens would schedule time in the system, cancel it on the main calendar, but leave it active in your wife's personal client portal. Very neat. Very professional. Almost impressive, really. The irony of this wasn't lost on me. Emma could barely turn on the lights, let alone participate in an elaborate digital prank. It's all in the report, Martinez says. Phone logs, credit card records, surveillance pictures. There's a USB key with video too. He slides the envelope toward me. I put my hand on the envelope, but didn't open it. And they never suspected? No. Stevens was too careful for that. But there was a pattern. There always is. A couple at the next table laughed, and I wondered if they would also end up in a place like this one day, talking about their own lies. And there's one more thing, Martinez continues, pulling something else out of his jacket, a smaller envelope. These are from yesterday. The pictures showed the two of them kissing behind the gym with Roger a short distance away, pretending to be distracted by his phone. Well, I say, that's convenient. He looks surprised. I'm guessing most people don't react this way to finding out they were murdered. I'm not your typical client. No, he says, looking at me. You're not. What's your plan? I place the photos back in the envelope and put both of them in my briefcase. That depends. I'll have to take a look at the new data. Mr. Montgomery, listen, I've been doing this for a long time, all right? 2 decades to be exact. I know how these things usually go down. And how is that? Not cleanly, particularly when multiple people are involved. I took a sip of my now cold coffee. Messy is sloppy. I prefer a more elegant solution. Just make sure it's legal, he said, leaning back again. I don't want to have to film you in the act. It'll be totally legal, I tell him, getting to my feet. Where's your invoice? Sent to the encrypted email you gave me. I shook his hand and was about to leave when he said, Mr. Montgomery, the answer might be a lot more obvious than you think. I stopped and said, we have a saying like that in programming, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. So, what does Occam's razor say? I see a woman who could almost be her, rushing by the window of the cafe, and remember our first date. The most obvious answer, I say, is that everything is performing exactly how it should be. I left Martinez with his coffee and his worries, and went out into the sunshine. The briefcase was in my hand, and I had a new sense of purpose. I looked at my calendar on my phone. Emma had a training session scheduled for the next day. Kyle was giving a presentation at the same time, and Roger had a 2-hour block reserved for a private client. I made a note of all of this as I walked back to my car. I needed to write the proper documentation for my program before I could execute it, of course. The next day, I spent the morning writing the documentation for what I was planning to do. By 2 o'clock, I was ready for my next step. I went downtown to a tall office building. It was a different company than the one I worked for, but who cared at this point? The law firm of Henderson and Associates was located on the 14th floor of a skyscraper downtown. "Mr. Montgomery for Mr. Henderson," I announce. "You can take a seat. He'll be right with you." I sit down on a chair in front of the large windows, looking at clouds passing by. "Mr. Montgomery?" asks a tall, silver-haired man in his 50s, looking every inch the successful businessman in his tailored suit. "I'm Robert Henderson. Please, step inside." His office is much larger than my study, with a view of 3 separate neighborhoods filled with people living their lives. "Coffee?" he asks, motioning to a fancy machine on a side table. "No thanks, I drank too much earlier." We took a seat on the opposite side of his desk. I held my briefcase on my lap. "So," Henderson says, "you said in your email you were worried about your marriage. What did you mean by that?" I opened my briefcase. "I'd rather show you." I took out the photos, the phone records, the GPS data, the financial information. I laid them out on his desk. Henderson studied each item with a calm expression. "This is extensive," he says at last, glancing up. "My customers usually have hunches. You, on the other hand, have proofs. I do my homework. I can tell." He lifts up one of the more incriminating pictures with Emma, Kyle, and Roger. Multiple people adds a layer of difficulty. Or ease? He smiled a little. "That depends on what you want to accomplish." "I want to do this the right way," I said, looking at his law degree on the wall. "With this, you'll have the upper hand. Adultery doesn't affect custody in a no-fault state like Connecticut, but it can impact the distribution of assets as well as alimony. What about a spouse utilizing corporate funds to finance the affairs?" Henderson looked interested. "Tell me more." I picked up another file. He used his position at the gym to set up meetings with clients. He faked appointments and misused the scheduling system. That makes for professional misconduct. He could lose his job, face a civil suit. And this consulting firm Kyle Richardson works for? He's been charging clients for fake meetings, giving himself an alibi. He took down a few notes before moving on to say, "Financial fraud, that's a whole other track altogether. The cars down on the street below us moved in predictable patterns. To be clear," I tell him, looking back, "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice. Those two things can be one and the same in some cases." He taps his pen. "Have you thought about a private settlement? I've thought about everything." "It could be less messy, a settlement." "No," I said. "They wanted chaos. They should get chaos." Henderson stared at me. "Mr. Montgomery, I've dealt with hundreds of divorces, and this is the first time I've ever seen one quite like this. I feel like you're not telling me everything, though." I reached into my briefcase again and pulled out a USB drive. "This has information on it which I think you'll find very useful. It details some not-so-legal business practices Emma has been engaging in." "While you were investigating?" "Regular systems audit work. Professional interest." He plugged the drive into his computer and looked at the files. His face changed slightly. "This is more than just about divorce. This is illegal. Yes." "And you're willing to go there?" "I'm willing to make sure he gets what he deserves, on all counts." "There are other lawyers who you could speak with," said Henderson. "I will. You're the first person I'm visiting, not the last." "Good. You're going to need backup. This one's going to be tricky." I give him a slight smile. "That's okay, I'm good at complicated." He begins to give me ideas, and I take notes in my phone, adding them to my ever-increasing algorithm. "So, when do you want to proceed?" he asks at last. "I have one more appointment, tomorrow, afternoon." "Another attorney?" "No, a different specialist." I get up, collecting my proof. "I'll let you know then." Henderson stood up and stretched out his hand. "Mr. Montgomery, be careful. Even a bulletproof case can have a hole in it. We have a term for that in programming, edge cases. I have accounted for all of them." The elevator doors closed, and I went back down to the first floor. On my way out of the building, I checked the address for the second psychiatrist I was going to meet. He practiced at another downtown location, albeit in a much less impressive building. That was where I was heading now, and I felt that everything was in place for tomorrow's meeting. Once I had seen the second psychiatrist, I would have all the information I needed to write my final program. I would execute it tomorrow afternoon. I slept like a baby that night. I always did when I had everything planned out in my mind. And the next day, I woke up at 8:30 a.m., ready to execute the first part of my program. I waited until Emma was sitting down at the kitchen table on Saturday morning before I brought it up. I knew she was going to be off guard after her training session the day prior, and I wanted to take advantage of that. I set my mug of coffee down on the counter, unused. "You haven't touched your coffee?" she says, looking up with mock worry. "No, I have to talk to you, Emma." She paused, as if hearing something in my voice. I put my briefcase down on the table. "What now?" she asks, with concerned innocence. I started taking out the contents, which included everything from photographs, text messages, GPS tracking data, and financial records. "James," a bit of a quiver now, a little break in her facade. "Roger, 4 months. Kyle, 3 months. Overlapping at times." I pointed to each photo as I spoke. "Good use of your free time." Her face goes pale, bit by bit. "You've been watching me?" she asked, her grip on the coffee mug tightening. "Investigating you. There's a difference." "This is crazy. You violated my privacy," she said, pushing away from the table. "Privacy?" I said, allowing myself a small, icy smile. "Like the privacy of room 412 in the Hampton Inn, or Kyle's tool shed, or Roger's personal training room?" She stood up fast, spilling coffee out of her mug, and said, "You had no right." I was within my rights. Connecticut State Law, Section 46B81. My attorney was very specific. You have an attorney?" She's frantic now, close to shrieking. "Multiple. Would you like to hear their initial assessments?" I open my briefcase again. "Enough!" she shouts, pounding the table so hard the evidence shakes. "Enough with your spreadsheets and your evidence and your fucking cold-heartedness." I sat there, still and calm. "Would you feel better if I was crying?" "What do I want from you? To be a person, to be my husband." "Your husband?" I reach for a specific photograph, the one with Emma, Kyle, and Roger. No ambiguity about the order they're standing in. "Which husband are we referring to exactly?" She sat back down, looking nervous. It's not. Please," I say, cutting him off. "Let's not waste time with lies. The evidence is overwhelming." Tears were beginning to form in her eyes, but this time they looked real. "But you did it so well. You were never home. You were always on your computer. So you slept with Kyle? And then when that wasn't enough, you started sleeping with Roger too?" She started to cry, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I was just lonely." "You don't need advanced scheduling software to juggle a bunch of flings." "What do you want from me?" she asks. I started to collect the documents and put them back in my briefcase. "Nothing. I've already talked to your board about your company's accounting. They were very interested." She looked at me, startled. "You didn't." "I also contacted Kyle's biggest client about his imaginative billing, and the corporate office of the gym about Roger's abuse of their scheduling system." "You're ruining it." "No, Emma, you ruined it. I'm just writing the crash report." She stood up again, a bit unsteady on her feet. "I need to get some air," she said. "Sure, but I should tell you, the assets are locked down and the divorce papers have been drawn up, and my lawyer will be in touch with yours on Monday." She turns to leave, but hesitates. "Was any of it real?" I think about that. "You had the original code right," I say at last. "You added the glitches." She lets out a strange laugh, but it's more like a sob, and runs out of the room. I hear her leave the house a moment later, and her car starts up and drives away. The coffee ring on the table is still there, the cup sitting on top of it, growing cold. I pull out my phone and send a text message to Henderson, telling him to go ahead with everything. Then I clean up the coffee and get rid of the ring, knowing it won't be the last one to be left behind in the days ahead. 3 days go by, and I don't see much of Emma. I clean up the coffee stain and keep the house tidy, and she stays out of my way. We avoid each other as much as possible. When Henderson says the paperwork is ready, I put the manila envelope on the kitchen table and wait for Emma to see it. The envelope was still sitting there on the kitchen table between us. It had been 3 days since the fight, and we hadn't talked much since then. We were doing our best to avoid each other, but it was difficult in such a small house. Emma was sitting at the table glaring at the envelope, drinking a cup of coffee. I could tell it wasn't her first cup of the day by the smell of it. "What is this?" she asks, though we both know. "The deal's a pretty good one, all things considered." I push the envelope back across the table. My lawyer's a smart guy. She didn't respond immediately. I could hear the lawnmower in the background. It was probably Kyle, cutting the grass. At least he was still doing something useful with his life. "Just like that?" she said after a moment. 16 years, 8 months, and 23 days, I repeat instinctively. "And no, not just like that. This is what you chose." She pulls out the papers and starts leafing through them, looking more and more agitated. "They're crazy! You can't possibly want me to sign this?" she yells from the kitchen. "Yes, I can. It's explained on page 4. She reads over the papers quickly, and her face goes pale. "You're taking everything." "Not everything. You still have your car, but you might want to check underneath it for any GPS trackers." "James, this isn't a fucking joke. I wasn't joking. I'm just telling you the truth." Her hands were trembling, causing the papers to shake. "The house? My savings? Even my stock options? Hey, you were more productive than most. You had 3 girlfriends. Think of it as a bill for being so damn efficient." She threw the papers down on the table. "I'm going to fight this. I'll get my own lawyer. Before you do that, I say, I'd recommend checking in on the progress of your workplace's investigation. You may not be able to afford a lawyer." The tears in her eyes reflected the morning sun, making them glint like ones and zeros. "You have all the bases covered, don't you?" She's crying. "Yeah, that's what I do. I debug systems." "Is that what this is to you? A system to debug?" I thought about it. "No, it's the perfect solution." She stood up from the table. "I need to think about this for a while." 48 hours. Then I'm sending it out." "You're extorting me?" "Negotiating." She walks back and forth in the kitchen, the sound of her silk robe swishing like the sound of hitting the delete key. "What about Kyle? Roger?" she blurts out. "They're in their own special place. Kyle's biggest customer wanted to talk to him about his billing methods, I think." She began to cry softly. "You are ruining everything." "Emma, no, I'm just running the cleanup protocols." She holds onto the counter, trying not to fall over. I stay seated, watching her facade crumble. "Just sign the papers," I tell her. "It'll be better for you." "Better? You destroyed everything. You did that to yourself. I'm just the one fixing it." She looks at me now, as if really seeing me for the first time in a long while, and says, "I don't know you anymore. I'm still the same person. You just never read my user manual." We both sit there for an eternity, the silence unbearable, and then she gets up and goes to the table where I put the pen. "I hate you," she mutters, scrawling her name with a furious flourish. "You're entitled to that. The deal is still the deal." I gathered my papers and placed them in my briefcase. "What now?" she asks. Her voice is quiet, and she looks small. She looks small and lost standing in our big, expansive kitchen. "Now? Now you have 24 hours to leave. I've booked you a room at a hotel." 24 hours? But your stuff will be sent to you when it's been itemized and inventoried. My lawyer will take care of it all. I sit up straight and adjust my tie, thinking of this like a business deal that has come to fruition. "I did love you," she calls out to me as I reach the door. I hesitated in the doorway. "I thought I loved you too, but I guess I was wrong." I left her there, standing alone in the middle of her shattered web of lies, and walked upstairs. Time to write a new report. 3 hours later, I got home. I'm sitting in my study. The sun has just gone down, and the scotch I poured myself has gotten warm. But I haven't taken a sip yet. There are things that need to be done before I can celebrate. I sat in front of my computer, looking at the email I had written, just waiting to be sent. It was addressed to everyone we knew. The Andersons, the Wilsons, the board of directors at the country club, all of them. Emma and I will be going to the next few parties separately. The text is polite. The pictures, not so much. I see a notification that says I have a private message on Facebook. Sarah Anderson has messaged me saying, "Hi James, is everything okay? Emma missed bridge club again." I open a new message window, ready to begin planting the seed. "Sarah, it's fine. It's been a trying time. Maybe you should ask Kyle about his business meeting last Tuesday." After a few seconds, I saw her respond. "What do you mean?" "Forget it. I shouldn't have brought it up." The little ellipses dance on the screen for a while longer. Then, "If there's something you need to tell me, James." I smile to myself. My wife has been staying at the hotel for 4 days now. It's been so nice and quiet. "I'll tell you tomorrow," I write. "As a friend, you need to know some things." Her reply comes in seconds. First thing in the morning. I close the chat and go back to the email. I don't send it yet. I need to time this right. A moment later, I get a text message from Tom Anderson. "What's happening to Kyle?" Sarah's in tears. "I can't tell you," I say, "but maybe look at his client billing." Not surprisingly, I got a call from Kyle just a few minutes later. I didn't pick up, though. I wanted to let him stew a little bit. I opened up my spreadsheet and kept track of my actions. Sarah would tell Janet Wilson, who in turn would tell her husband, who was the best client of Kyle's firm, and so on and so forth. A new email popped up in my inbox. It was from the manager at Rogers Gym. Mr. Montgomery, regarding the evidence you provided. I didn't open it. I wanted to time my emails perfectly, and I had a few things to do before I sent the next one. I was just about to close my laptop when the doorbell rang. I checked my security camera and saw Emma standing on the porch. James? I need to talk to you. I pushed the button. Any communication should go through our lawyers. Please. Everyone's being weird. Janet said I can't come to the charity gala. What did you do? I watched her face crumple on the screen. I didn't send anything, Emma. Word travels fast. You're sick. Sick would be hitting the entire country club email chain with a full evidence dump. This is just word of mouth. She wiped at her eyes. I can't even go to my favorite coffee shop without people staring at me. Maybe you should check out the cafe at the Hampton Inn. I hear the staff there is very attentive. She looked at the camera again. Her eyes narrowed. You like this, don't you? No. I'm writing it down. It's not the same thing. The security feed shows her turning away, shoulders shaking. I make another note in my spreadsheet. Social isolation progressing as predicted. My phone buzzes again. Kyle this time. I send it straight to voicemail, but not before noting his client's number calling on the other line. Opening my email again, I begin composing a new message to the country club board regarding Kyle's membership status. The words flow easily, each carefully chosen phrase another line of code in my program of social reckoning. A notification appears from the neighborhood Facebook group. Does anyone know what's happening with the Montgomerys? Heard some disturbing rumors? I minimize the window without responding. Some processes run better without direct input. The night deepens around my study as I continue my work, monitoring the digital ripples of destruction spreading through our social network. Each message, each whispered conversation, each avoided eye contact is meticulously logged and analyzed. Tomorrow, I'll release the next batch of information. But for now, I watch through my various feeds as Emma drives away from our house for the last time, her taillights disappearing into a darkness of her own making. I open a new spreadsheet tab. Social Impact Assessment, Week 1. The data points are already flowing in, each one a small victory in my calculated campaign of truth. The cursor blinks steadily, waiting for my next command in this elegantly designed program of social justice. The night stretches into dawn as I finalize my preparations, watching the spreadsheet's data crystallize into irrefutable patterns. By 7 a.m., I'm showered, dressed in my sharpest suit, and navigating downtown traffic with practiced precision. The morning rush hour provides ample time to rehearse my talking points, each word carefully chosen for maximum impact. As I ride the elevator to the 14th floor of Hartford's most prestigious law firm, I feel the weight of my briefcase like a loaded weapon against my thigh, filled with documents that will launch the next phase of my carefully orchestrated plan. The sun is shining into the office as my lawyer reads the odd paperwork I placed in front of him. He looks more and more surprised for every page he turns. Alienation of affection, he says finally, looking up. Risky. Connecticut hasn't had one of these in over 30 years. I know. I shift in my seat, the leather chair squeaking beneath me. That's what makes it exciting. He sat back in his chair saying, It's almost impossible to win. Victory isn't the goal. It isn't? He points at the document with a perfectly groomed nail. What is? Ruining Kyle's life as much as possible. A little grin appeared on his face. You've really thought of everything. It's my job. The traffic produces a distant hum, interrupted by the honking of horns, the sound of lives being lived and destroyed. Kyle's firm works with some major people, Henderson says, flipping to the next page. This publicity wouldn't be good for him. Exactly. I take out my phone and look at the time. The board meeting for his biggest client begins in 17 minutes, and the filing will be in the system in 12. Henderson's grin widened a fraction. You planned this? Everything is on a timer. Even revenge. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Anderson. Kyle just left his house in a hurry, looked upset. What's happening? I ignored it. The clock was ticking. His attorney will file for dismissal right away, Henderson says. He can do that. It'll be big news. My phone vibrated again, this time with a news alert from the local paper's legal affairs reporter. They were watching the filings, just as I'd guessed. It's about to begin, I say, showing Henderson the notification. He read the message and then said, "You released this to the media already?" I just got the right people to notice. The phone continues to buzz. More friends texting us. "Holy shit, James," one says from Tom Anderson. "Just saw the filing. Kyle's losing it." A message from Janet Wilson. "Is this why Emma's been hiding? Everyone's talking." I muted the phone and put it away. I didn't need to see all the responses. "Your wife's lawyer called this morning," Henderson says offhandedly. "They want to renegotiate. No negotiation. Terms are the terms." There was a knock at the door, and his assistant entered, holding a tablet. "Sir, Kyle Richardson's attorney is on the line. He says it's important." He looked at me, confused. "Sure," I say, leaning back in my chair. "Bring him on." He presses the speakerphone button, and his tone changes to something more professional. "Robert Henderson speaking." "Bob, David Whitman here." Kyle's lawyer is a little out of breath. "We need to discuss this filing." "I'm with my client right now, David. You're on speakerphone." A pause, then. "James is there? Good. Listen, this is crazy. You have to drop this lawsuit." "I'm not doing that," I say. "Have you lost your mind? There's no precedent of this working in... That's not the point, David. Winning isn't the only reason to do something." There was a long pause. "What is it you want?" he asks finally. "Justice. Don't be dramatic. What's your price?" I leaned forward. "Tell Kyle to check his phone. The board meeting should be starting right about now." Another news alert popped up on my phone. Kyle's biggest client had called a press conference. "Jesus Christ," Whitman says. I didn't do anything except start a real lawsuit. How people respond to that news is out of my hands." Henderson's assistant came to the door again and silently said, "Channel 8," while gesturing at the TV. The local news was showing Kyle leaving his office building, looking disheveled and panicked. A headline on the screen read, "Local consultant sued for strange incident. Client requests urgent meeting." "This is corporate suicide," Whitman says, clearly straining. "You're ruining his business." "No, David. Kyle ruined his business when he chose to charge clients for time spent fucking my wife." I hang up. He laughs. "You thought of everything, huh?" I got to my feet, picking up my briefcase and my pen. The code is only as good as the execution. My phone buzzed one final time. It was Emma. "What did you do?" she texts me. "Kyle's saying I wrecked his life." I ignore it. I can see through his window that more news vans are arriving outside his office building. "So, what's next?" Henderson asks. "Now we wait 2 days. Then we upload the financials." He nodded. "And after that?" I thought about it for a second. "And then we wait. There are some programs that just need to be left alone." 2 days go by, and I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I moved from my downtown location to the suburbs, wanting to see the effects of my handiwork as it spread throughout the city's outskirts. My leak of Kyle's financial records had taken down a lot of people, and the city was in turmoil. But I needed to get a look at him. I needed to know it was working, that I had removed the source of my problems. That's why I parked my car outside the gym and waited. I parked my car in the lot outside the gym. I had a good view of the interior from there, due to the large windows. It was fairly empty, except for a couple of people in the weight area. Nobody was using the private training room since Roger had been fired. I got another message from Martinez. "Stevens lost 3 more clients today. He's got 15% of his original total." I smile a little, seeing someone walking up to the door and then turning around as if remembering something. Or more likely, they read the most recent messages on the community Facebook page. The form response from the company is as follows. "Mr. Montgomery, thank you for your email. We are looking into this matter and will address it with the utmost seriousness." I see Roger come out through the side door. He is still wearing his training clothes, a gym bag over his shoulder. He looks a bit less cocky now, a bit more worried. He's looking around the parking lot. Then he sees my car. He stops. I raise my coffee cup to him. His expression shifts. He storms toward my car. I roll down the window. "You smug douchebag," he sneers as the window rolls down. "You fucking happy?" "Hey, Roger, slow day. You've ruined my name, my reputation. No, you did that when you decided to mix business with pleasure. Quite a lot, actually, from the security feed. It was consensual. The sex, yes. The use of company equipment, the fake training logs, not so much." He hesitated. "I'll get in trouble for this. Remember, a good workout is all about feeling the pain, right?" He laughed. It was a bitter, desperate laugh. You think you're so smart with your evidence and your systematic dismantling of everything I built, but you're just a pathetic, controlling... Easy there, Roger, I say gently. The certification board is still reviewing your case. Wouldn't want to threaten a witness. He backs off, looking defeated. A couple of his clients are driving away in the parking lot behind him, ignoring us. What do you want? He asks, his voice breaking a little. Want? Nothing. You're just code, running its course. I just got a text from the manager of the gym. Mr. Montgomery, about Mr. Stevens. Your boss is calling me, I say to Roger. Do you want me to answer it? He stood up and backed away. You're not a person. You're a machine. No, I'm just being thorough. You should really appreciate that, considering how thorough you were with your notes on my wife's sessions. His face went pale. But those videos were private. It doesn't matter anymore, Roger. That's the point. A few people are watching from the front doors of the gym, some members of the board of directors. You should head back in, I say, gesturing to the crowd. You have a review to get to, remember? He stops and looks at the people waiting for him, then turns around and walks back inside. I take another sip of coffee and look at Roger, who now faces the consequences of his actions. I wonder what he thinks about everything that's happening. I wonder if he regrets pulling that fire alarm on me. Probably not. He probably thinks he can talk his way out of this. But not this time, Roger. Not this time. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Emma. They fired him. I hope you're happy, I reply with a single word. Good. I start the car and look at the gym for a few more moments. The parking lot is empty now. A big sign that reads, "New members welcome," is hanging over the entrance. I can't help but smile. I know this isn't the end, but it's a start. And it feels good to see Roger squirm. I drive home in the dark. As I pass by Kyle's house, I notice that the lights are on. I wonder if he's home already, or if he's still at his hotel. I also wonder if Emma is home yet. But it doesn't matter. They will both be gone soon. And then I can finally put this whole mess behind me. A few minutes later, I'm back at my house. I park the car in the driveway and turn off the engine. As I open the door, I get a notification on my phone that the certification board has published their preliminary findings. I take a deep breath and step inside. I'll read them tomorrow. Right now, I just want to enjoy the feeling of seeing Roger crash and burn. He deserves it. The next few days pass by in a blur. The investigation is still ongoing, but the damage has been done. Roger loses a lot of clients, and his reputation takes a massive hit. It's only a matter of time before he has to close down his gym. As for Emma and Kyle, they both put their houses up for sale and move away. I don't know where they go, and I don't care. I'm just happy to see them gone. As the summer turns to fall, I pack my things and prepare to leave as well. It's time for a fresh start. The final box was loaded into my car and I was ready to leave. The sold sign on the front lawn of our house was a constant reminder of the life I was leaving behind. Are you really doing this? Change is just an algorithm executing itself, I reply. There's a hint of freshly cut grass in the air. Kyle's house has been for sale for weeks, but no one wants to buy it for some reason. Do you need help moving? Tom Anderson's voice startled me. He was standing at the end of my driveway with 2 coffees from my favorite local shop. Ah, that's all right. The movers are taking care of all the furniture tomorrow. Just personal effects. He gave me one of the cups. Emma asked about you yesterday at the club. She did? I drink slowly, savoring the poison. Yeah, she's going to Boston, for a fresh start. I already knew, of course. Roger's there, Tom says, watching my face. Apparently took a job at some boutique gym in Back Bay. That's an interesting wrinkle. He shook his head with a half smile. Still speaking in code, huh? Force of habit. It was early morning and a moving truck was passing by. Maybe the new owners of Kyle's house, I thought. I'd heard the bank had finally accepted a lowball offer. You never told me, Tom says. How did you know? About everything? I took another sip of coffee, thinking about what to say. Everything is a system, and if you know the right algorithms, you can see the patterns. What about now? What does the pattern say? The morning light glimmers off my new key. It's asking me to create another program and run it. He laughed, but it sounded a little uneasy. There's a reason Emma said you were more machine than man. Machines don't get to feel satisfied, Tom. Machines don't get to enjoy justice. A car drove by slowly. Probably Janet Wilson out doing her morning spying, I thought. It seemed as if everyone on the block was talking about us. It's a nice apartment, I tell him, steering the conversation elsewhere. 15th floor, east facing. Great for watching systems implement. You'll come by? When the script tells me to. We stand in silence for a while. In the distance, I can hear a lawnmower starting up. My phone buzzes one last time. Emma. I hope you find what you're looking for. I delete the message without replying. Some things are better left unsaid. I better get going, I say to Tom, shutting the trunk. Gotta meet the movers at 9. He nodded. You too. Take care of yourself. He left my office, and I drove to my new apartment. The morning traffic was more dense, and I was glad to have left the house early. I parked my car in my new parking space, B15, and took the elevator up to the 15th floor. The apartment was empty except for a desk and a chair in the room facing east. The monitors were already up and displayed a live feed from the security cameras. I had asked for this specifically when I went to see the apartment a few days ago. I didn't want to lose any time setting up my workstation. I got out my laptop and booted it up. It didn't take long to connect to the network. I stood by the window looking out at the rising sun. The city was waking up down there. People were going to work, traffic lights were changing, and lives were intertwined in a web of randomness. I took out my phone, no notifications. I turned it off and put it on the desk. The apartment felt empty. It felt like a fresh start, a clean slate. I opened a blank document on my laptop and started writing. Systems restored, beginning program execution. I copy and paste the text and insert.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our IN's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the IN's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.